Welcome to Times Up Outdoors podcast episode 11. Today we are joined by Eli Carter to talk about CWD. Eli is a UofM grad who studied mostly biology, ecology, anatomy, and physiology, and he has a master's degree in public health. He's a lot smarter than any of us. Professionally, he's an analyst in the corporate sector, but a public health research scientist by training. Eli has been an avid outdoorsman his entire life. Hunting, fishing, hiking, rock climbing have all given him a strong connection to conservation and spreading love and awareness for things affecting our wildlife. That, coupled with his academic background, has made him sort of a self-proclaimed amateur wildlife biologist. Eli is extremely good at communicating complex info and does a much better job at discussing and answering some CWD questions than we ever could. Something to keep in mind while listening to this is simply a discussion on a subject a lot of us have a lot of questions on. We realize that it is a hot button topic and you may have a different opinion on some of the things that we say or talk about, and that's alright. At the end of the day, we will all continue to respect the rules placed upon us and support further research in finding more solid info on this scary disease. We hope you enjoy the show.
So now what?
Are we good?
Yeah.
Are we on?
Are
Are
we
we live?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Do we
Am I
get
loud?
a real
Yeah.
quick
Am I
rundown
yelling?
of what we're doing? Or what
We're talking about potato skins.
Talking about potato skins.
have to have bacon on
Most-
the potato skins.
Always
Underrated.
bacon.
Chives? You like chives?
I'm not really a chive fan. I find them unnecessary.
Yeah, me too. I don't want green stuff.
I feel like
on
they
my bar.
overpower the flavor a little bit. They pull the palate off.
Yeah, and it's green. Like, if I want to green something, I'd order a salad.
Yeah, just let's not make this into
I'm
something.
at a
that's
bar.
not.
I want fucking potato skins.
Yeah, and you can't
Throw a little
fry.
sour cream on there.
You can't.
Oh,
really
you say
fry.
sour cream. That's
See?
like to me.
Bacon,
that's
cheese, sour
bacon,
cream.
cheese,
Yeah.
sour cream.
Boom, done. Don't overcomplicate
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
We don't need your garnish.
You're gonna over-engineer it. It's like
Jesus.
Was that a fart?
That was a fire.
Sounded like you ripped your pants.
Yeah, I think you did rip your pants.
You
You
definitely
sure you
ripped your
didn't?
asshole for sure.
Go on, dog.
You have
either
seepage.
ripped his pants or put a hole through them.
We were driving to Missouri. I was sleeping, and I wake up, and he's like, "Your butthole is leaking." He actually thought, he legitimately thought my asshole had some sort of leak in it.
No, it turns out Illinois just smells like shit.
Yeah, but Illinois has like a
You
bad
your
smell.
prolapse, buddy.
He's like, yeah, I wake up, he's like, "Dude, your butthole is leaking." I'm like, "What?"
It's like driving through Ohio.
Oh god.
The air just smells bad.
You thought you had
did.
anal seepage.
I was concerned about my own asshole for a half a
Do
minute.
any Lay's potato chips?
Yeah, it's like, potato skins.
All right. So this is podcast 11.
Are you sure?
We've done 11 of these.
Every
Yeah.
ti- Are you sure?
It
it's
is 11 because 10 was our live one.
How many times have we said are you sure?
Because
11 now.
it
I was
is
just saying, it's probably up to 11.
Well, probably 10. We
This
probably knew we
podcast,
did the
this is
first one.
podcast
Yeah,
number
for
one.
sure.
Are you sure it's number
Are
one?
you sure? We haven't done this before. Yeah. So anyway, anything to start off with? Any big news?
You haven't seen this yet, have you?
Yeah, I pulled up the other day. I haven't seen it on a computer.
Start up big news. What do we got? Big news.
Big
Any-
news?
any of
There's
it?
no big news.
I mean, big news. It's middle of deer season.
Big news is secret news. Still.
Yeah, secret. Middle of deer season. Seeing. I'm not seeing shit. All my corn's still up. So
We've got one dead deer on camera. Well, we got 4 dead deer on camera, technically. Autumn's doe got shot on camera.
Oh, yeah.
oh, true.
Hunter filmed, laid out some good footage of that. We recovered my dad's buck on camera.
Yep.
119 incher. It's leading the buck contest, I believe.
Yes. Nobody. Who scored?
Nobody scored
who
was that?
McDonald's.
We haven't, but if he wants me to come score it, I'll come score it. But I
McDonald.
don't think it's 119.
McDonald
It's
isn't.
short time.
Yeah.
It's a good buck, though.
It was
There's
definitely
been
a
some
good
good
buck.
bucks entered. There's been some big deer killed in the state this year, too. Like, consistently.
We've got. Who?
I think there was 4, but I know for sure 3. And all of them within 10 yards, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Even though they're all little dudes, they're scraping and tickling antlers and being little dicks to each other.
Doing some QDM. I like it.
I've only.
I wanted to shoot a doe real bad. If we didn't have this going on today, I might have whacked a doe when I was out there, just because she kept walking by. She was pretty big.
I've hunted 3 times since.
Yeah, you guys
opening
keep
day.
talking shit about me not hunting. I've hunted
No,
more than all y'all.
I haven't had time. I just got back from Cincinnati working, and then I was gonna hunt today, but I didn't. I'm gonna try to get out next week. Went opening day past the 6 point. he stood there and begged me to shoot him for like 10 minutes. I got that on film. He's and then the next time I hunted was with Austin. Saw a button buck under my stand for a while, and then that night I had two of what I think
A little time management today.
Yeah.
what I
Yes.
think are my shooters. Two of my shooters, possibly fighting. I don't know though. It was really dark. I was probably just like hallucinating and seeing things. It might have been two little tiny bucks. There was 3 bucks. One was a spike, and I saw him first, and then I heard something, and I looked back. I was looking through a little hole in the trees, and then I just saw two what looked to be big deer fighting, which I tried to film it, but it was like really dark.
Well, at least you've got good deer on camera.
Then I got down from my stand, left my GoPro up in the tree, and I had to set my shit back up and climb up there to get it. It was a fun night.
So we got duck season, which has been a fucking bust.
Dude, it sucks.
Yeah, we did a little jump shoot, shot 10 wood ducks out of a pond, and then Eli and I are going tonight to go shoot hopefully some mallards out of a drainage ditch. I don't know, but this will be the first time that we can actually get out and put decoys out at a proper time
Hell
and
yeah.
not hunt public. So to segue, Eli Carter, we are joined by Eli. He's actually my neighbor, and I'll let you do your own intro. Where do you come from? What's your background?
So I come from, as John just said, I come from next door. My background, relevant to today, is by training, I'm a public health research scientist with, I would say, pretty reasonable formal schooling in evolutionary biology and epidemiology. And I would say an amateur interest in wildlife biology. So I've got a pretty hard formal background and a keen personal interest in all things wildlife. And in addition to all that schooling stuff, I'm an avid lifelong outdoorsman, hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, rock climbing, anything outside.
You're a big rock climber too, right? Hey.
Yeah, not as much since I had my kid, but
Yeah,
Funny
for
how that
sure.
changes.
but yeah, right.
Everything.
It's hard to get out, but yeah,
We're lucky we're here today.
for a I think it was like 5 or 6 year span, I was a gym rat at least 2 or 3 days a week, and taking trips down south to Kentucky and West Virginia and the like at least a couple times a summer when the season was in. Rock climbing it's just so easy to lose you. It's just like it's like any outdoor
Yeah,
hobby.
right.
It's like, okay, I'm gonna buy this piece of Gucci gear and then this one and this one, and then okay, well look, I got all this stuff. I got to go out and use it.
Have you watched Free Solo?
Yes, I watched Free Solo and my hands were sweating the entire time.
I haven't watched it yet. I just heard it's pretty fun.
Oh my gosh! The public service announcement for people who don't know a whole lot or haven't really immersed themselves at all in rock climbing. The stuff that the guy's doing in Free Solo is like 0.01% of professional rock climbers. Like this guy going out without any ropes or safety harnesses or anything like that. That's like people don't do that, and that's why there's a movie about it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, somewhat insane.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, you gotta have a little bit of insanity going on, but you also have to have supreme confidence.
Let them out. Sorry, my dogs are being stupid.
You probably see a squirrel.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's probably a squirrel.
Oh, it was a ground squirrel.
Kill it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hold on 1 second.
Something wrong? I feel like something's wrong.
Kind of gotta pee.
Easy. Okay. Anyways. Yeah,
Everything
no,
okay?
so, yeah.
So following today, or leading up to today, it's kind of stemmed out of a whiskey and beer laden bonfire conversation that John and I had, where we started going back and forth a little bit, talking about like wildlife
Could be a
diseases.
fixin'.
Talking about wildlife diseases and CWD, which I kind of knew a little bit about at the time, but I've done, I've read up on it, and it's a really interesting, unique, and kind of a little bit scary in an abstract way kind of disease.
CWD.
So that's where
CWD.
we're going to transition into why Eli is here. We were out having beers in the back, and we were talking about the effect of EHD and CWD and this trip. this is right before we were going to Missouri.
Yeah.
Right when we learned that they just got hit with a huge case of EHD. And so I'm thinking that I know what the hell I'm talking about. And then all of a sudden this dude starts breaking knowledge bombs down on me. And I'm like, well, we can't talk about this anymore. We got to do a podcast with you. So first question is, he started talking about how, okay, just give us a brief overview, this is again, political subject.
Let me throw this in there before we get going in. I come into this whole conversation with a super negative point of view. For all the listeners, I'm sure there's a bunch like me. Mm-hmm. I fucking hate this conversation. I hate CWD. I hate talking about it all the time because I think it's a true disease. It's a real issue, but I think there's a big push on shit that doesn't need to be fucking pushed. I'm tired of hearing about it. So I come in with a real negative impact on it. So I'm glad to have this conversation.
Yeah, and also just disclaimer, we are not claiming to be experts.
No.
We're not claiming to be scientists or anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm talking about, which is we figure we bring him in because he knows a little bit more than what we're going to know about it.
And again, with the disclaimer, this is all based on like research from personal curiosity.
Right.
I'm not a wildlife biologist.
So this is basically like our own research. He's obviously done a lot more than we have. We probably get more angry and stop reading things. My perspective on it is negative, but maybe a little less negative than Nico's. And when John talks, he usually just mumbles and nobody knows what he's saying.
That's fair.
So we don't know what his opinion is yet. So
we've done a lot of research on it.
Yeah, I think we've all three of us.
Is you can look at, from real scientists, biologists, whatever you want to go with, there is 100% facts from both sides of the party. So who do you believe and how do you believe it is my issue with it. So that's why I kind of go towards the hunter's side more than
you're going towards what you want it to be.
Yeah,
you want it to be, which
obviously we'll I'm sure circle back to it, but I'm curious about like what some examples are of coming from both sides of it.
So that's exactly what I was going to say, is that this isn't going to be one thing. Eli's not here to swing one way or another. He's going to lay down the facts that he's learned, and he's going to say, fuck it, you make it up. So anyway, starter off is, what the fuck is EHD?
EHD?
No, wait, CWD. I'm sorry. Yeah, being in Michigan.
CWD, everybody knows chronic wasting disease is what it is, and it's what is called a transmissible spongiform encephalopathy. And that's a bunch of like long, complicated words that I'm going to admit, I had to practice saying encephalopathy in a mirror. TSE is what everybody calls it because nobody wants to say all those long words. And transmissible just means it can be transmitted. Spongiform means that it looks like a sponge, and encephalopathy means it affects your brain. And so what it is it's a transmissible health issue. It's a transmissible disease that at the end of the disease state is characterized by a brain that has a bunch of holes in it that makes your brain look like a sponge. And effectively what happens is the disease kills your individual neurons inside your brain, and when those neurons die, that's what creates those holes in it. So like it literally is just like breaking your brain down.
So the sponge form of it is what it looks like at the end state.
Exactly.
Okay, and so CWD is that. See, I wouldn't have even known that I knew it was a brain issue, but I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the fact that the brain is actually breaking down is what leads to those like characteristic behaviors that a lot of people associate with CWD. Like, okay, it looks all skinny and mangy and whatever, and that's because they're not eating. Because their brain's not giving them the right signal.
And their brain's telling
them that's like an end
hungry.
stage.
Exactly.
That's far down the road.
That is like end stage clinical presentation of CWD.
Okay, so if a deer contracts CWD today, how long does it take before that CWD is making the deer look the way you would think it would look? If I remember
the numbers correctly, it's about 18 months, maybe 25. That is about a year and a half to 2 years.
Okay.
From the exposure and contracting the disease to the final like end stage clinical, like presentation that you would expect, like with the mangy appearance, like total lack of, what I would say like a social inhibition, where like they're just like walking out in the middle of an open field, they're not skittish like you'd expect a deer to be normally. And that happens in the last like month and a half, 2 months. it's like 6 or 8 weeks or something like that, where they actually have like that clinical presentation. So it's like they have it and it's in their body, and it's got that long incubation period of about, like I said, about a year and a half, 2 years. And then that final, like 2.5, or the final month and a half.
And that's a big argument for it too, is that there's studies of it, and like there's going to be a whole bunch of them that have shown the incubation period can be up to 7 years, and which is almost the lifespan of a wild deer.
Yeah,
that's a big. Yeah. That's a bit. Nobody knows the exact numbers. I think 1.5 to 2 is the most common that you see.
Yeah.
So, but then you get these true studies of 7. It's like, well, what the hell?
The clarification about those like long spans, at least the facts that I am familiar with, that I've seen, a lot of those longer duration spans are under like clinical circumstances. So if you've got like captive deer and they're exposed clinically, like, okay, you give them food that has like the disease-causing agent in it, which actually I should probably circle back and talk about the disease-causing agent.
Yeah, well,
that's what makes it super interesting.
We'll circle back.
Yeah. But then they're like exposed on purpose and then monitored, and sometimes there's like, okay, well, we'll see if this extends the disease progression.
You're saying that was a 7-year, or that was the
longer terms like that every time, and like I said,
they really wouldn't have any way of knowing if.
Right.
They wouldn't know.
You don't know when the exposure.
They don't know when the exposure was. They can find a dead deer that's 7 years old and say it was killed from CWD. It might have got CWD last year or a year.
Right.
Before.
Exactly. I think they get that 2.5 because that's where you hear that people talk about, or 1.5 to 2.5. You hear a lot of guys say that the younger bucks are more likely to get this disease, and then the younger bucks, number one, get shot sooner.
That's what the QDMA people put out.
Right. Well, it's a study and it's a fact, and that's real numbers off it. But that's number one.
That's not what the QDMA people put out. Because if that was the case, then we should be killing
every
young buck we see.
Right.
Well, it's definitely
because they're the ones that are spreading it.
Definitely one of the things they say.
So it's bucks disproportionately have a higher statistical likelihood, and that just goes like it's a behavioral thing.
Is it because they're more social?
It's because they're more social. They're moving from group to group. The females don't range as far.
Branches,
let's go back to how is it spread? I think that's one of the biggest things that because everybody knows how TB spread. Everybody knows. But you're talking about a bunch of scientific shit.
Yeah. So what's really interesting about CWD specifically and those TSEs, which is CWD is a TSE, those transmissible spongiform encephalopathies, and those illnesses. So CWD is one of those TSEs, and there's a handful of them. But those diseases are characterized by the disease-causing agent, which is something that's called a prion. And what a prion is you got proteins in your body. Proteins, it's like that's what makes up all the functional everything in your body. A prion is a protein that's malformed. So a protein, to function correctly in your body, has a really specific three-dimensional shape. You think of it like a key in 3 dimensions.
Sure.
And a prion is a protein where if it's one of its like folds in its three-dimensional shape is messed up, and that creates the disease state prion. Because a prion protein is like it's a naturally occurring protein in your body. Everybody, we all have them in our bodies right now. But a disease state prion is a malformed protein.
That looks like a regular.
Well, it's got a different conformation.
Okay.
It's got a different three-dimensional shape.
So what stops the body from rejecting something like that?
They're just not. You mean like what stops the body? I guess I don't.
Sure. So like we were talking about, and I'll push it a little further. That like when if I get a prion, let's say in my bite, a muscle tissue or something.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you could.
Specifically with a prion, like we're talking about the prion from CWD, for example, it is right now like there's no scientific evidence, no clinical evidence that humans can be infected by a prion, a CWD prion. And
blood-brain barrier.
Blood-brain barrier and species barrier. There's little subtle distinct differences in protein structures from species to species.
Let me back up and what the hell is the blood-brain barrier?
Blood-brain barrier is you got the blood that's going through your veins, and it gets into your brain. Blood is cycling through your brain. There's actually a physical barrier in between, like your venous blood that's pumping through, like your arteries and goes through your heart and whatever. It has to pass through an actual physical barrier inside of your body in order to cycle into your brain.
Oh, okay.
And there are
a filter.
Yeah, exactly. There's a bunch of
filters out CWD.
Exactly. That's exactly specifically what it is for. Exactly. Yeah. So blood-brain barrier might be part of it, but a big thing is that the way that prions propagate as disease-causing agents is when a disease state prion comes into close like physical proximity with a non-disease state prion, like a healthy natural prion, it actually induces that healthy prion to change configuration into the messed up state. And that's how you end up with these big aggregations of it moving through your body.
So it's more or less like a cancer to where I guess a cancer is different, but it tells the other proteins in its brain to change as well, and that's how one small microbe of it could be so detrimental to.
Yeah, exactly.
But humans have. So there's mad cow disease is the same.
So that's actually like a great segue. Is
right.
Why CWD is unique? Is that mad cow disease is transmitted differently. CWD, and then there's one other TSE called scrapie that affects sheep.
Yep.
So CWD and scrapie are unique among TSEs in that an infected animal actually sheds those prions.
Okay.
While it comes out in their saliva and their urine and their feces, and it's in their blood and all that.
Which goes back to how it's spread.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's I'm kind of disjointed and out of order here. You'll forgive me. I should have brought notes. I should have brought notes in.
It's the Times Up Outdoors podcast, man. We're always out of order.
But mad cow disease, for example, it's just as lethal as CWD is. Like the thing about a TSE is that as soon as you are infected with a TSE, it's literally like as soon as TSE takes hold in your central nervous system, it's a death sentence.
There's 100%.
There is a 100% mortality rate associated with any kind of a TSE.
Okay.
The thing about like mad cow disease, for example, is that the prion has to actually be ingested. Uh-huh. It can't. It has to be ingested, and it doesn't. It doesn't like eject or off of the diseased animal. So like a cow
doesn't shed it.
A cow that has BSE, which is the clinical. It stands for bovine spongiform encephalopathy. Right. But so a cow could have BSE and be standing like in a big group of cows, and none of the other cows will get it.
Oh.
But the reason that we had that big outbreak, I think it was like over in Europe, of mad cow disease, was that somebody decided, oh, we're losing a lot of protein efficiency here with these cows. Like you're raising these cows for meat, and somebody decided, hey, there's a lot of bone meal and muscle tissue and brain tissue and bone marrow and whatever that's going to waste. So why don't we just take this, like offal, 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 the offcuts from these cattle, grind them up, process them a little bit, and put them in as a protein supplement.
Ah, okay.
And so it got into this positive feedback loop where one diseased animal got into the food chain, and then it propagated out. And so that's how it spread, was because animals were actually eating that diseased tissue.
Sure.
But the thing about a TSE like mad cow disease is that you can break that infection cycle by just not eating the infected flesh.
Okay.
The other thing about BSE, about mad cow disease, is that it's actually transmissible to humans. So if a human were to eat...
So that was my main question, is why is that different? Why is that able to transmit to humans, but CWD still, like at this point, they haven't? And wasn't it the case in the beginning of the mad cow disease thing, they said this can't transfer to humans, and then something changed, and now it can? Now, I think that's what people seem to worry about with CWD, is like, right now they say it can't, but... Because that's what I always hear. Well, it can't transfer to humans, but
exactly.
So mad cow disease couldn't at first either. That's kind of like their argument.
And one explanation for that could be something like incubation period, like Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease, which is the human equivalent of mad cow disease. That's like what you call when a human gets the prion disease. It has like a long incubation period. There are some estimates that it's like, I think like 20, 30.
Meaning you wouldn't even know you have it?
You wouldn't even know you had it until way down the line.
So like we could possibly,
We could
possibly be infecting ourselves with CWD and not know until we get dementia.
Right now, there's no evidence to suggest that.
Right.
So be careful about saying that.
Yeah,
you don't want to alarm anybody.
I meant like a hypothetical. Like,
yeah, okay. I mean hypothetically, sure. There is. I really like this. In learning about CWD. I listened to a couple of podcasts with a wildlife biologist, a guy named Ryan Murphy. There are two terrific podcasts. One was on Joe Rogan Experience, and the other was an episode of the Meat Eater podcast that this guy and Doug Duran were both guests on. And the way that he describes, okay, well, what are the chances of like a person being susceptible to CWD? Is he says there is a small, non-zero probability, where it's like, look, it's unlikely. Right now, there's no evidence to suggest it, but the probability of it happening isn't zero.
Well, and I read it seemed like a hype scare article where the article I read on the surface was, it transferred. They found it to transfer to a macaque or whatever those monkeys are. And so when I read that, I was like, wow, that's kind of scary because we're very similar monkeys. Mm-hmm. And then I read an article about that article, and what they didn't tell you is that they literally took injected it into
directly into his brain.
So
exactly.
Yeah, you did. And that's what pisses me off, and probably you, is that you read stuff like that, and then you read another article later on, and you're like, oh, these guys are like the does that got it from urine. They were like force feeding these fawns feces and urine.
They were killing fawns, trying to give them disease. They were literally drowning them in urine. With urine, blood, and shit.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. It's like at a certain point you wonder about like what's responsible journalism, what's responsible reporting.
And I don't think it's I think the irresponsibility doesn't lie with the research, because the scientists are just doing scientists stuff.
They're trying to figure out the exact reason.
So do whatever you got to do. That's fine. But the research or the journalism on it, when they just say, "Yep, a monkey got it," instead of saying a monkey got it, but this is how the monkey got it, and the reason why they're doing this study is this, and blah 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 blah. They didn't do that. They just leave it out, and then
it's because they want.
And then my mom is sending me the article, and my fiance is sending me the article, and like, we can't eat our deer. It's like, okay.
Well, that's where I've come in with there's two very different sides, because one group will put that article out, a monkey got it.
Yeah.
And then there's another group who puts out the monkey got it, but this is why.
Exactly.
So why?
It's just like that's not a.
That
natural,
doesn't make sense that these aren't on the same team to me. Why is science not being played as science here?
Or
at least, why is it not being reported?
Again, it's not the science. It's
journalism.
It's the journalism.
Exactly.
And now you're talking about politics.
I was going to say that gets
of
very
people, because now
that's what makes me pissed.
Exactly. The politics of it.
You can ask the same question about vaccine efficacy. You can ask the same question about whether or not the Earth is flat or round.
It's exactly like that. There's science to say all kinds of different shit.
Exactly.
But there's always two different sides to it.
Because
for some
the
reason.
scientists are absolutely on board, and it's just the two aspects of it just fully based on what the other person's agenda is. And okay, let's say somebody that is fully against hunting deer in Michigan want to share that article saying that, okay, this meat's infected, you shouldn't hunt this, and we shouldn't do this, and because it's got this disease, now we need to pay the money to do this and that, when that pushes their political agenda. And then on the other hand, you have the hunter saying, no, it's actually not, because this is...
I think QDMA is an awesome organization. I think they do great stuff. But I feel like they propagate some stuff about CWD that it doesn't. I don't even know that they're putting out wrong information. But what I see trending is that they put out only information that will still allow them to also continue their QDM policies. And it's like, to me, I'm like, well, hold on a second. I've read things that say that these... What's wrong? Oh, the coffee maker?
Yeah, it's just diarrhea.
Got coffee sound in the back.
My bad, I needed to cut another cup. No, so now what I see is like, okay, so you're picking and choosing what you're saying. And to me, like, I've commented on some of they probably hate me. I'm surprised they haven't blocked me off their page. But I've commented and been like, I've read stuff that says that you should... Why does it take so long?
No, I'm just saying you left my refrigerator open too. That's sweet.
Your dog.
I was going to say something as soon as you were done talking. The dog's got his head.
I wasn't done in there. but why is it so weird? Like what we were talking about a little bit ago. You're saying younger bucks, are more susceptible to having this disease.
So people say.
So why aren't we? Yeah, exactly. Some people say this.
So how come QDM isn't showing those? Why do they only believe the ones that seem to coincide with QDM policies when
that's a whole,
there might be?
Yeah, I was just saying that's
a whole political subject.
Yeah, you say that's a
Right.
whole ball of wax.
And that's what irritates me.
And that's I feel like the problem with, to me, in the course of my research, again, disclaimer, my personal conclusions that I drew is one of the biggest difficulties in properly addressing, managing, whatever word you want to use, CWD specifically, but any sort of a threat to conservation or to hunting or anything like that, is misinformation, lack of being correctly informed, things like that, and people going and trying to make intelligent decisions.
Right.
With incomplete or incorrect information, or even just misleading information. Another one, like a great example from one, I don't remember, one of those podcasts with that guy Ryan Murphy was talking about. I think it's actually Brian Murphy. Now that I said that, since we're on the air, I'll correct myself. Was people talking about, I think it was actually Ted Nugent went on somebody's podcast and started talking about, you get more mortality in deer in a winter die-off than you do from CWD. And he cites an academic, scholarly article that has, good methodology and good approach and whatever, and fails to mention that is, number one, from a study that was conducted, 15 years ago. And when the disease was still in its early states of emergence and hadn't quite had the traction and the prevalence rate that it has today. And the other thing that you kind of leave off of the end of that statement of there's bigger mortality incidents with winter die-off is that the scientists make that statement about right now this does not seem like a significant source of mortality, but
they're worried that it will.
This study should be used as a jumping off point for future research. Okay. And that you kind of end up, like I was saying, is one of the biggest risks is misinformation and the difficulties that creates. But the other thing is, scientifically, we're at a point where we kind of just don't know certain things. Mm-hmm. And that's, and again, we strain into political conversation here, talking about some of the efforts from the DNR. I know you specifically talked about okay, well, take my deer in for testing. If I want to get it mounted, what am I supposed to do? It's you're placing the onus on the hunter, but at the same time, those kinds of policies are, if you want to approach it from an evidence-based, perspective, things like that are almost necessary.
That's fair, and that's fair because I'll be the first one to say that I don't want to be bothered with checking my deer in. I don't want to be bothered with any of it. But I also, in the same hand, I can't say that I don't want to be bothered with this deer check-in and have to fuck around, get my deer mounted or processed. In the same hand, I also do want solid evidence to say this is exactly what's happening. This is exactly.
Well, and with the deer checking stuff,
they got to figure it out.
It's information gatherings,
but they're very behind the eight ball with.
They suck at it.
With making last year, I shot 2 bucks, and both bucks I shot, I got different information about what to do, and it didn't make sense to me because they said you have to take this deer to a check station. You have 24 hours. I said, well, I would like to get it shoulder mounted, and it's shit. I had to work the next day. Me and John recovered the deer at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
On a Sunday.
I was wondering if that was when you posted that thing, if that was a hypothetical.
No,
if that was
an actual that was actually happened to me. And what I was told was you have 24 hours from the time you recover your deer to take it to a check station. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter where you take it. And I said, but I thought I wasn't allowed to take it out of the county that I'm in. They literally told me you can take it to whatever check station you want.
Yeah, so I had to read the regs on it 2 or 3 times.
This was the DNR told me this.
Yeah, this was printed in this year's hunting regs.
Yeah,
they disambiguate that a little bit. They say you have to, if you're hunting within either the core zone, right, or the wider management zone.
And I'm in the management zone.
Okay, so Jackson County or something.
Yeah, Calhoun.
Okay. So if you're in one of those zones, you can't transport the deer outside
that zone.
of that zone.
You can go into the core zone.
Unless you present the head within 24 hours.
Yes, that is where, like, so when they told me that,
Yeah.
they said you can go, so I said, I can take this deer to work with me tomorrow, and which is what I did. We drove the fire truck to the DNR station downtown at Atwater.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was one there.
Right.
There
Yeah.
is.
No, that's like their.
So we took it there,
Southeast.
went in there, the guy did his thing, aged it, whatever, and my thing was this. Okay, so the reasoning behind not being able to transport deer from county to county and taking a deer from the CWZ management zone or core zone into a clean zone, we'll say, is because they don't want it to spread.
Exactly.
So they don't want that deer carcass shedding prions into a clean zone. Okay.
But what they want to do is reduce the possibility of it, because as soon as you take that deer out of the area, you just kind of like don't know how it's going to be handled. Like I have every confidence that if you were taking a deer in the, like the CWD management zone, you would dispose of the carcass properly and
Right.
But they don't know that people are going to do that.
So what's the difference if, so they're like, well, you can take it anywhere as long as it's in 24 hours. Well, I put that deer in the bed of my truck and I drive it to Detroit. Whether it's 24 hours or 48 hours or 26 hours,
It's still going the
it's
same
still
distance.
doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm still driving a potentially infected deer through clean counties. And then again, after I took it to the check station, they take the little lymph nodes out. Or no, they didn't. I had to take it to the taxidermist. He cut them out.
Yeah.
I took it to the taxidermist that night. I took it to his firehouse.
Yeah.
The other one I shot, I wanted a European mount. I had to take that to a grocery store at noon on a Sunday and meet the taxidermist in the parking lot. He was like the manager of the grocery store. And he's like, yeah, I'll make an exception and do it for you because you got to go home. But it's like, why don't they have these people at the check stations? Why can't I take my deer to the check station and have somebody cut out the lymph nodes and I can go on my way? That to me would, because I would do it. There's a check station 5 miles from my property.
I think probably the simple answer is money.
I mean,
you got to pay somebody to be there.
Not saying that I'm not going to follow the laws. I'm going to follow the laws, period, whether I like them or not.
Yeah, and I think that's the difficulty with surveys like this is you have to balance data collection, and I think I'm not sure. Like again, I'm not an expert on it, but I think that the whole point of the 24-hour rule is to like induce prompt response. Like you got 24 hours, so take care of this right now.
Get it done.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty much saying hurry up and do it.
And then you can wait 3 weeks to hear from us.
Right, exactly.
So something that I think about a lot too is that, they say the CWD. I don't know how long have they said it's been in Michigan? Do they think?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's been quite a long time.
Yeah, I think it was. I know the first cases were out in Colorado in like the 70s. I think. I want to. Of course, somebody's going to fact check me on this probably, but I want to say
there's only like 10 people who listen to our podcast.
Right.
Okay. Well.
And you're one of them, so it's 9.
Who's it going to be?
So is there anywhere in the country where
it's like in the 90s, I think.
Is there anywhere in the country where an entire population of
2015, the first CWD deer was found in Michigan.
Okay, well, it wasn't the 90s
first
then.
case, but that would
that's in Michigan.
In Michigan,
not
And the first case was described out west
in
somewhere
the 70s.
in the 70s.
So
I think
in
it was
Michigan.
76.
Now, when did they start testing deer for CWD in Michigan?
Probably then.
I think
would assume.
2016.
Well, that's okay.
Right.
So that's my point. Is that don't you think that maybe they keep saying the more we test, the more we find?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. If I'm not testing, if I'm not getting tested for HIV, you're never going to know I have it.
Yeah.
I don't have HIV.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Good.
How to use that.
Wow.
I was going to say that's you kind of went 0 to 60 there.
So they found just a quick number going off of what you said. Basically, total CWD positive / suspected positive deer. This is all in Michigan.
I think it's only like 2%.
111 out of 58,854.
Okay, so way less than 2%.
Out of 58,000.
Yep.
So the thing,
according to
2%.
2019 Michigan.
Yeah. So the thing about CWD is, and this goes back to how it's transmitted. The thing about CWD that makes it, in my opinion, deserve at a minimum attention.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too.
the fact that, I was talking about how it has these conformation changes and it changes the shape of these proteins. Normally, proteins are really environmentally susceptible. So you change the ambient temperature around a protein by a couple of degrees in either direction, and it stops working. It starts breaking down, and that's why things like overheating and fever are really dangerous. You stop getting protein function. That's why like hypothermia is a big, like your organs start shutting down and proteins stop working the way that they're supposed to. It has an optimal range. And with normal disease-causing agents, things like bacteria or viruses or even fungi in some cases, killing it's pretty straightforward. You're like, okay, heat it up real good, let the sun irradiate it or do whatever, and it breaks down on its own. Even super infectious things like measles are only infectious for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
But the thing about a prion, a disease state prion, is that this change in its conformation, this change in its three-dimensional shape, makes it extremely resilient. It makes it really, really resilient against temperature changes. It has to be heated up to, again, the numbers are kind of, should have had some notes in front of me, but I think it was something like 600 degrees Celsius. You have to heat it up
Jesus Christ.
In order to disassociate the prion. It's pretty much not killed by irradiation.
What was the temperature that you had to heat it up to?
I might be misremembering it, but I think it was like 600 Celsius.
So you got to burn it.
Well, I had read somewhere that burning it didn't work. If it's in a field and you burn the field, it
that's the thing is how hot does it feel? Does a surface burn?
Fire, right. 600 degrees Celsius.
I was gonna say you got to get like steel forge temperatures, like cremation temperatures.
So like a volcano eruption would help.
That'd be great. Do we have any volcanoes in Michigan?
No.
Here's the biggest reason I think I have one of my reasons I had such an issue with it.
Yeah.
So the deer population in Colorado is higher than it's ever been.
Yep.
Despite CWD being there, as we've known for the longest.
Yeah.
So what is the biggest reason for panic other than there's a chance of that happening? Same with Wisconsin. They killed all the deer, but the deer all came right back.
Yeah. So
like the people killed the deer.
So deer populations. I mean, you can have population movements, and this just goes back to this is I'm drawn back on undergraduate ecology, which was like 10 years ago. So bear with me as I try to remember this stuff. But the whole thing about population, booms and busts is that they're affected by a bunch of different variables pretty much simultaneously.
Yeah.
So you can have something like CWD that is exerting downward pressure on population size because of mortality related to the disease, and you can have due to, like maybe targeted cullings, for example. If you're like, okay, well, let's shoot the bucks, the does are still around. The does are still getting mated, and they're breeding. And a lot of times when you have high like mortality instances and stuff like that, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the idea that you've got like a high like deer mortality rate over the next handful of years. The does will start having higher instances of twins and stuff like that. So the population wants to rebound, and when you're managing it, it kind of will. But that doesn't mean that there's not another force that's pushing up against it. It's like say, okay, the deer and totally not arguing about it. Never argue with any of you guys about deer statistics.
I'm just truly, it's a curious thing.
But it's just because the populations are high doesn't mean that they're threatened. And the other thing too is
not threatened.
Not threatened. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Fair. Yeah.
I said the opposite of what I meant.
So, and that's what I was going to go off to. That's what they said. The best thing, they said essentially the best thing for a population of anything is to kill it. It's to hunt it. Like when you think about looking at, I'm gonna reference back to the Meat Eater podcast where they were talking about the cougars.
Yeah.
And the path of the puma, and they said that the cougar population in Michigan was decimated until they started hunting them, because now you're putting more money into research and wildlife by buying tags and doing all this stuff, but you're also getting the population down to a point to where, like you said, it wants to rebound and to where they're going to find that you're making more ecosystem for bigger herds or bigger groups of these cats to move in and do the same thing. So like he's saying, that makes sense. Yeah. Is that it could be absolutely, they could be dying for mortality rates of CWD but in turn, the population is just coming back and rebounding itself.
So just the argument against that you're going to get from hunters that don't want to buy into the politics part of it is, well, then just like any other disease that has pretty much come and gone, and just like, when we get a bad winter and the turkeys die, they rebound.
Yeah.
So why do we feel the need to, like, there's fucking snipers going out right now laying out giant deer herds as if anybody who knows deer knows, if you kill the deer from this area, another mature buck is going to take that area. So more deer are going to go to that area.
Well, and not only that, but let's say we put a bubble around Jackson County and we somehow kill every single deer in the county. Boom, dead. Every deer is dead. There's no more deer with CWD in Jackson County because they're all dead. We clean up all the bodies. They're all gone. Open up the bubble. New deer come in. Oh, these new deer have CWD.
And I was going to say, that's exactly the concern. I was going to say, I couldn't have been set up for that point better, is that the concern is exactly, like I was talking about, that persistence, that resilience. The thing about the CWD prion is that it is environmentally persistent, and it's unique. CWD and Scrapie, like I said, is unique among TSEs in that they are, an infected individual is constantly shedding that disease agent while they're infected.
Yes.
And whether they're still in their incubation period or in that final, you have obviously greater concentrations of the disease agent when you're in that final stage, because it's multiplied itself up to a higher threshold. But even when you have like an early infection and it's still incubating, you're shedding prions, and since those prions are so resilient, so hard to remove from the environment, I think the best estimates upon when I was reading up on it, I think the current estimates are anywhere from 10 to 20 years for the CWD prion, like the disease state prion, to disassociate and stop being infectious.
Right, I've heard that too. Yeah,
exactly.
So 10 to 20 years from the time that
from the time that it's created and shed out into the environment. From the time that it's created and shed out into the environment, 10 or 20 years is, and that, again, that's kind of shooting from the hip about talking about one of the big obstacles is what do we know? And what
there's no way to know. Yeah, I mean,
are you going to go out and sample the soil that you know is contaminated over and over and over again?
So to me, I feel that out of all the research I've done, when I say that, it makes it sound like I fucking read about this all the time. I read pretty much any article that comes across my news feed. That's the extent of it, and every now and then I'll dig a little deeper.
Yeah, sure.
But from what I've read, what I've listened to on podcasts, all that other shit, what I've come to the conclusion in my own mind, and I might be dead wrong because I'm not a scientist, it does not seem as if this disease is controllable at all. And what irritates me is I feel like all these regulations and rules and laws and everything, like I don't mind having to check my deer, whatever. I don't know, like, and maybe they are more than I know. I feel like more money from research needs to be going into some way that they can, because I read an article one time where they were finding that there are deer that they're not resistant to it, but there's deer that have. Maybe it was that they were resistant to it. There was
a longer incubation period?
There was like a genetic code that they were able, and I was like, well, why don't they figure out a way so that they can get that genetic into the deer herd?
Right. Start working on an antidote rather than trying to
because
But
I'll
how do you create an antidote for a protein?
Right.
Biochemically, it's
no. I think that from what the article was saying is that the only way that this person thought they could control it was by harnessing this genetic code that was in these specific deer and figuring out a way to get that genetic code to be prevalent into natural deer herd. Mm-hmm. And that way the natural deer herd would naturally be less susceptible to the prion.
You'd have the last research that I read about inoculation efforts, the last research that I read, it all kind of blends together where I picked it up from. It's bouncing around in there, and I'm sure it's factual. Is that they attempted inoculation on, I don't remember, it was definitely a cervid. It was definitely like a deer animal. I don't remember if it was a caribou or an elk or something, but they introduced some sort of a genetic marker or had individuals that had this genetic marker that had been observed in the environment to be associated with lower instances of CWD that's diagnosed. And what they found when they did a clinical study on it was that it actually had an extended incubation period.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like instead of a 2-year incubation period, it was like 5 years or something like that.
Which would be huge for whitetails.
Which would
Oh, yeah,
would be
because,
enormous.
yeah.
You basically have an incubation period that was the lifespan of the deer. But then you come back to
Aside from the fact that you're eating that.
exactly. I was going to say. Then you come back to the problem of you've got these deer that are living their entire life with this infection incubating in them, and they're shedding this infectious agent, and at a certain, like that's.
So you're
it's kind of hard to look at that and call it a win.
Well, yeah, because to be honest with you, regardless of what I feel, if I got a deer and it tested positive, I'm not feeding it to you.
Yeah, PSA.
I don't know that I could.
PSA for the other 9 listeners, the CDC and the WHO
They don't
currently recommend if your deer tests positive for CWD, don't consume it.
Yeah.
Even though they're, yeah.
Even
And I
though
don't
there's no
think that I
efficacy.
could. I really don't.
I wouldn't be able to.
No.
I'd like mentally, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
be able, I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to feed it to my family.
Imagine if 30 years from now your kid gets dementia, you're going to think it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's probably my, just for time restraints, my biggest issue with the whole thing, and it's really not even a science thing, it's just a hunter's version of the whole thing. So the biggest issue with CWD is that it can potentially kill our deer herd, as far as like a conservation point, right? That's our issue.
That's a concern.
I do not understand the fact that if the deer are going to die, we need to kill all the deer.
Right.
I can't get that. They are culling the shit out of deer and dropping tags. And if the prion is going to live there, no matter what, what the fuck is the point of killing the deer?
Yeah.
So the idea, the best examples of effective intervention, basically the consensus is if there's not CWD in your area, you don't want CWD in your area because of that environmental persistence.
Right.
And the idea behind culling, and this was, I'm trying to remember, it was a European country that had it anthropogenically introduced. It was transported by people into a different geographic area.
Right.
And it was found, I believe, in a caribou population in,
I read this too.
I think it was Norway.
Yeah.
And their response to it was, all right, we're drawing a line, right? We're drawing a line, and that's going to be the boundary. And they just culled the entire herd unit.
They literally killed all of
Everything, like scorched earth, you sow the land with salt kind of a thing.
No shit.
Yeah.
And have declared that they are going to continue like targeted cullings.
The fuck was that?
I have no idea what that was.
A tree just like brushed past your window.
I think it's one of your dogs.
You think your dog
playing in
just
the hops.
took a tree with him?
Jesus.
Actually, no, because both your dogs are on the porch.
That's what I'm saying.
He came from over there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody just
There's
threw a
nothing
tree
in
at your window.
That was terrifying.
there. Yeah. I think it was the abominable snowman. Or a grizzly bear.
They're gonna
Then they've pledged. They're like, okay, well, we took out this entire herd unit, and for I think they said like 5 years or something, which is on the very lower end of the spectrum of what estimates
They're
are
just
for
gonna
how
continue
long.
to kill
They're
it.
like, we're just going to kill it all. We're not going to let anything live in that area. And that's really, to your point about like culling, that's really the only way to do it is to eliminate the because it comes back to like I was talking about earlier about like mad cow.
Yep.
Where you can interrupt the infection cycle, and that with CWD because you're shedding that infectious agent into the environment. With mad cow, you're not shedding it into the environment, so it's a different animal. But with CWD, since you're shedding those prions into the environment and they sustain for so long, seriously, like the only way to be sure is kill everything
For upwards of 20 years.
for upwards of 20 years, and it's one of the, and I'm for the record, as John said, I'm not sitting here being like, oh, we should kill everything and leave everything fallow for 20 years.
Right.
But you have to, at least I have to, think the devil's advocate position and be like, well, what else are we going to do?
Right.
Well, yeah.
Sure.
That's,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know that's like the crux of it is like if it's like I think it was you, Scott, that said like is there like no way to stop this infection? Is it's like, well, what do you do?
Sure,
Yeah.
but
It lives forever.
I get that. Like that's
It's not a living
that's the
thing,
only thing to do. That's
the difficulty of it is it's literally a protein. It's a clump of molecules. It's not it's not a living thing in the sense that like a bacteria or a virus or
kill it.
fungus is.
There's a
that you
big
can
difference
kill.
too between being able. Let's say this is what we want to do. This is our real thought process.
Yeah.
We're going to kill all the deer in these 15 counties or whatever it is, right? Well, with caribou, You can draw a line. They're a herd animal, and they migrate. Whitetails just
long
go
ways.
wherever the food is.
And that's the thing.
So I just don't understand.
It wouldn't
so
even
like
be- I don't
even
even think
if that's
you do it.
not the idea, which it, as of right now it's not, because you can't kill them all
I don't,
legally right now.
I don't see that being
So
socially viable.
Right. So the
never mind feasible to, to execute on.
So then the whole idea of hiring and paying for snipers to go out there and shoot these
don't
fucking
get it
deer
either.
by the hundreds and then lower doe tags, it doesn't make any sense, because anybody who knows whitetails, which is the biggest issue with this, is that these people that make these fucking rules don't know whitetails.
Come at
know
it from a position
that
of ignorance,
more deer are going to pile in there. If you kill the dominant buck, another one's taking over. If you kill the breed doe, another one's going in there. They're just going to keep funneling there. You're just spreading shit out.
It's like people introducing gun legislation and talking about high-capacity assault clips.
Yeah, fucking idiots.
Right, exactly.
It's kind of hard to take you seriously when you obviously don't know what you're talking
Here's a
about.
video of this guy shooting an AR-15.
Well, I just read something.
It's a pump action 12 gauge.
I just read something the other day saying that they found that bleach
Yes.
effectively gets it off
Good.
the
Yeah.
surface.
Good news is bleach kills it. It disassociates the
Fuck
protein.
yeah, start
But-
spraying bleach.
You can't. What are you going to do?
I was just saying you're not gonna spray bleach around everywhere.
Right, you're gonna go bleach, but here's the thing: is that
So what that was a win for was butcher shops.
Yeah.
exactly.
Because
That's
there's a
like
lot.
for
There's a
processing
lot.
your meat.
There's a lot of one of the things that when like last year I was talking to a guy that does deer, and they were saying like there's places now that are saying we don't do deer anymore because
So they do other critters too.
infectious
we
concern.
know that it's not a problem, but
We don't want it to be a
the
problem.
person who comes here with their cows doesn't know that, and they're not going to come here anymore because we process deer.
Yep.
They don't want it mixing.
Yep.
So, that was now that they can say, well, we bleach everything.
And so that also helps too with like I can imagine disposal. And so if
I'm just going to bleach my deer.
let's say
before I cook
let's
it.
say I get, let's say I kill a buck and it tests positive or whatever, and the DNR they say, do you want your meat? I said no. Dispose of it. Then they can put it into a giant pit with bleach and fire and kill it.
So here's the other thing. I don't even know what the rule is here. I know that if you kill a deer and you get your results back and it says positive, they'll give you another tag.
Yes.
What if it's January 3rd by the time you get your
Right.
thing back? Can I still go out and kill another deer?
No.
Probably not.
That sucks.
Yeah, it does.
But you're still keeping the antlers and stuff, and I don't know.
I said, I want the meat. That's the most important part.
The thing
Yeah.
that pisses me off about
Yeah.
the whole thing is that
like
okay,
those a lot.
if that's our our intention is to kill every deer in Michigan, just so for the next 20 years.
Well, I don't think
Okay,
it is.
okay, all right. Let's say it's not, which is not. It's just literally just a quick reaction force of a solution,
Yeah.
and say, oh shit, we got to do something. Let's kill them all. But people who think like that, we got to kill them all. The CWD is so bad. Like, listen, what is going to happen 10 years down the road if we did that? If we killed every single deer in Michigan for the next 20 years,
Yeah.
what happens 20 years from now?
The deer from Ohio.
There's
are
going to be a
come up.
trophic cascade.
Sweet.
Or you're either going to get displacement from
I
out
want
of the
that.
state, or you're going to have a trophic cascade.
Yeah.
Well,
what
and-
is a trophic cascade?
Excuse me. The
We're
best
talking to a
example.
couple of fucking hillbillies. here, right?
The best example of a trophic cascade was, I'm guessing you probably read about the reintroduction of wolves into
Oh yeah.
Yosemite.
Oh yeah.
Yosemite National Park a handful of years ago, and it indirectly changed the course of a river.
Yeah.
And the
Oh,
idea,
yeah.
and the idea was
they made a little video.
And the
yeah, and the idea was the wolves prey on the deer, the elk, or whatever was right there, whatever cervid it was. I think it was elk actually. And then since the elk population was pushed down, the elk were browsing like the aspens or something,
Yep.
or the willows or whatever that were on the banks of the river less, which led to beavers displacing to different areas.
That's called
which
a
led to them-
trophic cascade.
and basically what happens is you have what's called trophic levels. It's an ecological principle. And basically trophic level has to do with like what area of the food pyramid you're at. So, like a predator, like a coyote or a wolf, is at one trophic level, and then the cervid or the deer or whatever that they eat is at the next trophic level down, and then the grass is at another
You're talking
trophic
about
level.
food chain all the way down the ecosystem
Exactly.
is just a trophic.
Trophic level is like your position in the food chain.
Yeah.
And a trophic cascade is where you mess around with one link in that food chain and
Changes
you see
everything.
echoes of it throughout the entire thing, throughout the entire system.
Sure.
Yep.
So
It's like
if
introducing
you
invasive
killed every deer in
species.
Michigan,
Trophic cascade.
there'd be a trophic cascade for sure.
Yeah.
Unless,
God, yeah.
unless, like you said, you just have individuals that displace from external areas. Come in from come in from up from Ohio, or up in the UP coming out from over in Wisconsin.
Right, they're going to.
Yeah, Wisconsin
Well,
or
they go up through
Illinois.
Wisconsin.
Yeah,
Wisconsin,
shoot
yeah.
across over from.
Exactly.
That's a big thing too that a lot my issue so I hunt on literally a county line road.
Yeah.
Well, Shiawassee County is part of the outer ring of this whole thing. And Genesee County, where my house is less than a mile away, is not.
Yeah.
I cannot take a deer home
Without presenting it for testing, yeah.
which is like I could fucking throw a football to my house.
And I was going to say, and that's the other thing is it's kind of like the 24-hour thing where it's like an arbitrary line where a county line is just your convenient area.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to get technical about it, you could say it's with it. You could treat it like the PFAS restrictions, where it's like within so many miles of
the
this.
radius of this one location.
Except for I think that it's just from like a literacy with reading maps, and it's easier to say if you're hunting in Jackson County,
Yes.
you have to present it, as
People are
opposed
dumb,
to if you are 15 miles away from this point on the map, you're like, am I going to get out my slide rule and my sextant and check my bearing?
Well, I mean, there's so many different. I mean, you can get into the baiting thing. You can get into like everything.
And I was going to say, and the thing about baiting is just that it aggregates.
I don't even care. The thing about baiting is like I don't hunt over bait.
Yeah.
I did my whole life. I don't have a problem with people who do.
Yeah.
But what I hate seeing is all these guys getting online now acting like there's some kind of like virtue to them that they don't hunt over bait, like they're better than someone who does.
Yeah.
And they're on the QDMA page writing comments, that belittle guys who do. It's like, you're going to turn a lot of hunters away from hunting because they literally can't. What if my only day to hunt is November 15th every year? I can get out there one day. I got the weekend before. I can go throw out some bait.
Do everything you can.
I can go out there, throw out some bait the weekend before, and then get out there for maybe 1 or 2 days. Why am I less important as a hunter than you are because you get more time off of work?
If
You're a super bow hunter and you hunt funnels and...
That's for another podcast because the thing that pisses me off because I love that guy. I love that
So
guy
do
that goes
I.
out one day a year.
But you
and
see
hunts
these
it.
guys
Because
online
He's still
just-
buying a tag. He's still paying the money.
Well, you know what's going to happen? That guy's not buying a tag anymore.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I love that guy because he's not fucking with my deer herd. He's not going to accidentally shoot my monster buck because I've been hunting this thing all year. He's not going to. I mean, he might accidentally shoot it, but he's still buying tags. He's still buying his base license.
My biggest problem is, like with baiting, for me personally, is I take my kids on the youth hunt every year and putting the kids over the bait and
they don't care what they shoot.
And I got into an argument with a guy about it on QDMA, and he was like, "Well, why don't you teach your kids how to hunt, like actually hunt? Because now this new age hunter, they're so much better than everybody. Hunting over bait isn't actually hunting to them
because they're 12 and they have limited attention span.
They're 8, dude. I have an hour with them max. It depends on the temperature.
Exactly.
I don't have time to take them out and scout in the summer and show them everything that I've learned over the accumulation of 20 years of hunting that came with time. My way of teaching them how to hunt
is I
just want to get them into it right now.
Exactly.
And now I can't hunt over bait.
And that's one of the biggest takeaways.
Which we killed 3 on the youth hunt, so I can't complain.
Awesome. That's one of the biggest takeaways. People are always asking about CWD. If it's this thing that we're not quite sure how to intervene on it, the takeaway from it of what should you do is number one. Like it's something that definitely deserves attention.
100%.
It's something that definitely you should look at. You shouldn't ignore it. But you also, and I'm going to go ahead and eat my words when I was like, oh, it's a little bit scary. But that was me in reference to it sits in the environment. You can't get rid of it. It blah blah blah. And I look at that and I'm like,
It's like living with a fucking monster under.
Exactly. It's like having it's like running. It's like having an anxiety attack where you're running around playing ESO and there's like boss music playing in the background and there's no boss and you know that there's a boss around you but you don't know where it is and it's just like in the back of your mind just kind of tickling you like there's something.
See, exactly. And that's why we trust you with all the stuff because you're a super nerd. I love it.
So the thing is it merits. ESO is Elder Scrolls Online. It's an MMO video game.
I knew it was something. I knew what boss music was though.
Anybody knows boss
I was
music.
thinking of like King Koopa in like Mario Bros.
Yeah, exactly. And you could do the same thing. You could say playing Zelda. But it's you got something that you know is there.
There's a lingering stench to when you're out in the woods. And it's CWD, but it's nothing to be concerned about because there is a concern,
but you can't let it.
I was going to say that's the takeaway is pay attention to it, be aware of it, And I mean, really, even though it's inconvenient, get your animals tested, if
Yes.
for no other reason, because it informs the science.
And I don't have any that's
keep hunting and get other people out there hunting, because I mean, historically we're ebbing. Like our numbers are ebbing, hunters are ebbing as you know, the baby boomer generation ages out of hunting. We're losing numbers there, and there's not enough people from our generation, from our age cohort, that are
Everybody just wants to sit inside and play ESO.
Exactly, which I understand, which is fair.
which takes me back to why I like UDMA, because they're doing a lot of stuff going towards it.
Exactly.
I just get into it with them. I don't
make sure
I
that
just
you're
don't
not
like
letting
what
it-
they push on.
Yeah, just make sure that you're not letting it push you away from the stuff that you love. And the hunter is the best conservationist. And the thing about the plug that I'll give, from the only plug that I'll give from taking one side or the other, is to advocate testing and information gathering. Because as a research scientist, as a guy who's done public health research and learned epidemiology and how to sample things and stuff like that, is if you don't know the scope of the problem, you've got no clue how to deal with it.
Right.
And helping agencies like the DNR understand the scope of the problem, understand where are we finding these deer with CWD, where are we, what's the extent of it, how fast is it moving,
Right.
Yep.
and things like the one that I was really confused at first when I was looking at the hunting regs was the differential antler point restrictions, where it was like in one section you had like high requirements for antler points, and in others they were like, as long as it's a spike, it's fair game.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's actually, I didn't know this until I read up on it, but that's actually like an ongoing environmental experiment.
They're trying to see what's
Natural
gonna happen.
experiment, exactly. Here we make people shoot young bucks, and here we make people shoot mature bucks. Which approach is
And in
more
5
effective?
years, and in 5 years, you're going to have something that comes out of that. And say, like,
Exactly.
over the course of the 5 years, we've done this. And
So
this.
the plug is get out, hunt, get your animal tested, and help the science. And that kind of go back. I feel like I'm hearkening back to all these good points that they made
Right.
on these other podcasts. It is I think it was Doug Dern made the point where he said, get out, hunt, contribute to the science, and buy time for science. Because just because we don't know how to handle the problem right now doesn't mean 5 years, 10 years down the line we won't know how to
I like
solve
that.
the problem.
That's a good way to put
That's
it.
fair.
Is help science.
Small.
Everybody needs their offensive line.
Yeah, that's fair.
Think about hunters as the offensive line for the wildlife biologists.
I can dig that.
I like that.
Well,
Let's
anybody
go.
got
On that
any,
note-
got any big closing arguments, thoughts, comments, concerns?
I've got a lot of arguments, but I don't think we have time for that.
Still eating my deer that I shoot this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything
well-
you wanted to say that you didn't get to say?
Probably, and I won't remember it until I'm trying to
later
fall
on.
asleep tonight.
We can do another one.
Shit, I should have said this.
In the last bit of it, Eli and I are going to go shoot some ducks this afternoon, and I think Scott's going home.
Sweet.
Nico's
I'm going to Mark's thing.
going to, Mark's thing.
I might,
Mark and
I might
Rodriguez
go
is
to
true.
that.
Shindig.
Oh,
So-
the other thing, actually, one last thing that I wanted to touch on was 2 points. We were talking about EHD.
Yeah.
By the time you get into deer season in Michigan, EHD is largely not a concern.
Right.
It's got a really relative to CWD, it's got a really well understood mechanism of infection. It's a virus. It's only spread by biting midges. And once you have a hard frost, just like mosquitoes, those midges
ticks,
die out.
Mosquito.
We had a
It breaks,
good frost
it breaks
this morning.
that. Yeah, exactly. It breaks that infection cycle like we were talking about. And you don't have to worry about it. The other thing too is, well, I probably would have reservations about it. I think if you kill a deer and you find subsequently that it was infected with EHD, that you can still eat it. I think. I'm pretty sure.
I would imagine that the powers that be say nope. But
Yeah.
I don't know
But since it's a viral infection and it's
Sure.
not something airborne like
Well, and
tuberculosis,
EHD
for
is
example.
not completely
Yeah, so
you don't-
EHD
there are
is
deer that
EHD is not 100% lethal,
yeah, they can live through that.
and you have different like wildly varying mortality
Right.
rates with
Yeah.
EHD, and that's since it's a virus, you can have like adaptation to it.
Right.
It's not something like a protein that's in your
right,
body.
it's more
You
like
can
the
have-
flu rather than
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Drought years are the years that you have to worry about.
You can have things like where
Definitely didn't have
further
that.
south, where those biting midges are around a lot more in greater numbers.
Missouri.
Exactly.
Missouri.
When you have an EHD outbreak, you might have somewhere between like 5 or 25% mortality from it.
Right.
And then you have an EHD outbreak in Michigan where it's like a naive population that isn't really exposed to the illness, and you get like a 90% kill off.
Oh,
it's
wow.
ridiculous.
Which we had.
So it varies wildly by
Yeah.
how exposed it is, and that punches back to that point you were making about like the genetics in the population, and whether or not there's resistance in the population. So EHD in Michigan, typically by the time you get to deer season, you're not super concerned about it. The only other one to talk about, which we just mentioned the big three that you want to talk about today, and I'm making sure that I at least hit all of them. The only other one to talk about is bovine tuberculosis, which I think I saw an article on 2O's webpage a couple of weeks ago. It was reminding people that bovine TB in deer is communicable to humans. It is. It absolutely is. You can get it. A couple things to remember is that TB is a chronic infection. It's not necessarily lethal. It's a bacterial thing. There are ways to treat it after exposure. There are prophylactic procedures that you can take if you think you might have been exposed. The best advice about TB is to wear gloves when you're processing your carcass, and be aware.
It's very easy to spot too.
It's also very easy to spot.
Look for it.
Look for it. If the and that's across the board.
I remember as a kid,
my
dad always.
Anything that's weird when you're processing your animal, fucking toss it, man.
My dad always told me to look for it.
If you're drawing a bee on that deer and it looks sickly or really skinny,
don't shoot it.
Let that one go.
Or shoot it and let it die.
Or if you shoot it, pay attention to what you figure out.
Exactly. The other thing about bovine TB is that it's area in Michigan anyway, and Michigan is like one of the very few places in the continental United States where it's actually a problem in free-ranging animals. It's got a very isolated area. It's limited.
It's like up by Alpena, right?
Yeah, it's up in using your hand map. It's like I think it's more like index finger area kind of whatever. But
It's up somewhere.
but there's real low prevalences of it. It's like notable when you find a case of it in free-ranging deer. The big thing about it is that you find it in like captive livestock populations. So like, for example, there was recently around Petoskey, there was like a dairy farm that had an outbreak of bovine tuberculosis. And veterinarians, large animal veterinarians who do that kind of stuff, they understand how to test a herd. They understand and in the U.S. there's like a zero tolerance policy. If something tests positive for bovine TB, just kill it immediately.
Yep.
You don't let that grab a foothold.
Well, sweet.
Yeah.
That being said, thanks.
Real quick before we get off, we got just Mark's GoFundMe.
Oh yeah.
We got a guy laid up in the hospital.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me get that last word in.
For sure. Yeah. No,
him and Rodriguez both.
I just wanted to touch on that before we close it out. So, but yeah, I mean, you good on closing it?
Yeah.
Well, before we close it out, we'll post some links on Facebook. We got a couple guys laid up in the hospital from a house collapsing on them and a house fire. So if you haven't seen that on the news, they're going to be recovering for quite some time. And I think that there's a GoFundMe still out there. So
it's still going. I checked it today.
Just pay attention to our Facebook, and we'll post that periodically. And if you could throw a couple bucks their way, we would appreciate it. And I'm sure so.
Absolutely.
And then make sure you follow us on Instagram, Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube. Give us 5 stars on iTunes.
5 stars. It helps. Trust
Keep
me.
paying attention because one of these days we're going to tell you something cool.
Thanks for all the info. That was
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, man.
I'm glad I was able to share information. Hopefully it wasn't too confused and disjointed.
No, I like it.
No, that's perfect. All right.
All right.
Kill it.
Go kill something.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I gotta poop.